All right, Sanjay, let's get started. So great to have you all here today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Gets You Done Venture Studios, the premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for 1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an HR tech company. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. So today I have a good friend of mine, guest, serial entrepreneur. I mean, he's the only person I know that worked with Rihanna, building a company. Sanjay Bhatia is a serial entrepreneur, as I said. He's the CEO, president, and founder of Runday. So I know a lot of us have been talking about ChatGPT and the impact on our lives and our business. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about serial entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about the journey. So if you do have questions, feel free to put those in chat and I'll check them and as appropriate, we'll discuss those questions. So with that, I'd like to bring Sanjay. So hey, Sanjay, how you doing today?
Hey there, glad to be here. Happy Wednesday, everyone.
So Sanjay, so everybody's talking about ChatGPT and you and I have just written a book called Artificial Imagination. Tell them a little, let's talk a little bit about what's happening. Where is ChatGPT? What kind of impact can it have on companies?
So it's going to have impact on, I think, every person and every business, in the world. You think of the iPhone, we're having an iPhone moment. So the iPhone came out, people questioned its relevance. But within a decade, they were literally moving villages in order to get better reception for the iPhone that the whole village changed. That's the kind of impact. We don't have many of these, iPhone moments, but we've just had one. And it was really a half century in the making. It seems like, November 30th, they just put out this test and everyone got excited. They got to a million users in 5 days, which is faster than Snapchat or Instagram or anything you can think of. And then now they're above 100 million and, approaching 1 billion users within, a matter of months. But that moment where they released this thing really took a long time. We had all sorts of different types of AI technologies, recurrent neural network, LSTMs, that were sort of capable of doing this. But the training time was the big issue. So ChatGPT, at least the 3.0 version, took about 277 years to train. Now, the transformer model allows you to do that, in a matter of months. So that's kind of the type of, investment you have to put into these things. But it's really changing things that were unimaginable. I was looking at a podcast yesterday and talking about, as AI specialists, what we predicted, even a few months ago, the jobs like accountants or things like that we thought would get automated. And really, it's a little bit different. There's new AI that lets you do a runway catwalk. So supermodels are being disrupted, right? So things that we didn't really consider.
Wait a minute. A runway catwalk?
Yeah, they're able to generate videos now. So the next wave of innovation is a kind of text to video or modifying videos. So you can take an input video of a model running on a catwalk, and you can change her face, her body type, her outfit, and create a video of them, doing that same movement, but with different garments, a different actress or model. It could be a virtual model, it could be a giraffe. It could be a lot of different things. So just, no one thought, okay, the supermodels, it would be impacted, but that's where we are. So no one predicted where this would land correctly, but all of a sudden these transfer models are going to production. And we're seeing that now. People always ask the question, well, what is my job safe? There's always a jobs concern initially. My view of, macroeconomics is that about 70% of countries are in a population collapse. Some countries like China have a very extreme projections. And so there's 11.3 million, open jobs in the US. There's, over 100 million globally. So even if a few million jobs are disrupted, this is really a solution to the population collapse, right? So we just simply don't have enough young people entering the workforce to sustain a global economy anymore. So really, it's not so much is my job safe? But, can the ecosystem survive? And without AI, they really can't. So in a way, these generative AIs are coming in, adding, potentially millions or hundreds of millions of people to the workforce as an effect, and keeping our economies healthy and growing.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So I know you're working on Runday. So talk a little bit about Runday and what exactly you've had 7 companies, you've had a number of successful exits. Let's talk about Runday and how Runday is going to change the world.
I'm really excited to be working on Runday. I've done a lot of small and medium things that were very niche, but Runday really is something that applies to nearly everyone. So it's really an always available AI for appointment growth. So it really builds generative AI chatbots that are similar to ChatGPT, that are optimized to book appointments and answer questions 24/7. So, I don't know about where everyone lives, but here in South Florida, it's almost impossible to get a business to pick up the phone. And so what Runday provides is that assistant that's always there 24/7 for anyone to text their business. I need a couples massage, I need my dog groomed. Right now, unfortunately, my girlfriend is recovering from a bike accident, and just we need to kind of move her from, what she's doing now to physical therapy, and just the nightmare of like just scheduling a time, finding someone that takes the right insurance that's available for what her situation is. That's the type of thing AI can do really well. And trying to use the phone, they call back, they leave a voicemail, they call back. The world's a nightmare right now because of a couple of things. One is the population collapse, right? And secondly, Generation Z just doesn't want to use the phone. They think of them like fax machines. And so there's a lot of statistics on, they find them controversial and annoying, and they'd rather do business with somebody that they can simply text. So at Runday, we've created a artificially intelligent scenario where it's like, the owner, and say, I need to get my dog groomed. I know the owner. I just say, hey, can I get my dog groomed Thursday? And it even looks at my calendar and the system's calendar and says, sure, we can take you at 4 or 5. And that type of use case is what we see is one of the greatest challenges for nearly all businesses. And we want to be the platform that solves it for everyone.
Yeah, so Ann just wrote another major feature of ChatGPT is the ease of use interface. My friend Kayvon from SoundHound yesterday announced they have a voice interface, right, for ChatGPT. So she said you don't have to learn some complicated dashboard. Just enter plain language like, please change the tense of this text from present to past,
Yeah.
paste in the text block, and voila, it's production. It produces the retense text. So, I mean, what are the possibilities? I mean, so not just appointments, Sanjay, what else can you do? I mean, Runday is kind of like the Wizard of Oz back there. I mean, there's so many different things happening. What else
Yeah.
can you
So,
do?
appointments have lots of other aspects. A good example is a job interview, right? You don't want to just book it. Somebody might have questions. They may be a better fit if they're a front end developer. They may be a better fit to be interviewed by somebody with a similar skill set rather than something that's very different, or the appropriate level of seniority, or we might notice that they're not a good fit for that position. It may be a better fit for another position. So the AI can actually do what's called NLU, neuro linguistic understanding, and understand the context, the company, the particular situation, and really make recommendations to both sides, the consumer and the business, to really fit in. So the thing the chat GPT does is like paraphrasing and summarizing. A great example is, you might be, so you're a developer in India and you applying for a job, but you are about to have a baby and you want to know, how much paternity leave do you offer? And so what Runday is able to do is go look at the employee manual, find that paragraph, summarize it into a response. Hey, we, for this position, we provide 10 days of maternity leave, or whatever the answer is. So that may be something where, until they know that answer, they may not be ready to interview.
Mhm.
And, somebody may not be ready for, say, a certain medical service without getting some questions answered. And so it's really imagine having this incredible assistant that has access to all your documents and have read them, and they're never going to quit. That's the biggest part of the problem, is even when you find great people, they don't stick around. So Runday, is a loyal assistant that will read all your documentation, summarize it for your customers and stakeholders who want to, and we do this all over messaging. Now there are integrations like OpenAI Whisper and Google Duplex, where we can also do this on via telephone. So if someone does want to call in, that's something we're looking at in the future. But the response has really been, people are on Zoom calls like this all the time, and they really, they really prefer text. And text is really the messaging is really the future, and availability of internet is even something where, Elon Musk is launching T-Mobile 5G satellites, where anywhere you are in the world, top of Mount Everest, middle of the ocean, you won't be able to access the internet or send a voice call, but you will be able to do messaging apps like Runday or SMS, no matter where you are. So SMS is going to become this first class means of communication, and that's really what we're focused on.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but this is more than just an assistant. This thing is kind of like your grandmother, cares about you and loves you and does the kind of things, and then starts to understand what you like. Won't it, Sanjay? I mean, I don't understand what kind of things Sanjay likes, what kind of appointments you need or want. You mentioned the couples massage. It may understand that you like to have those on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Hey, listen, oh, by the way, there's a sushi restaurant down the street. It could be interesting. I mean, the possibilities. I mean, how much knowledge does ChatGPT have, Sanjay? It sounds like it's it's nearly infinite.
It's not infinite, but it is a massive corpus of text. So all of these large language models, and there's many of them, right? So versus the iPhone, where there was kind of one, and then we had Android, there are going to be a lot of large language models. So Wikipedia is one of the key sources. Also almost all popular books. So imagine something is read, every Wikipedia article and every book. That's sort of a starting point. Coding is another piece. So the miracle of generative AI really started when OpenAI partnered with Microsoft, got access to GitHub, and taught it because English is so nuanced and so subjective. It was actually very difficult to validate whether the responses are correct or not. So what they did was they actually first taught it to code. So they asked it to write code, the codex model, and then that was really the miracle that happened, where they got that working correctly, and then evolve that into human language. So it went from, validating code to then, now that we know we can do that, we build on top of that coding capability to English languages. Now it supports all languages. But yeah, there's a plugin API that just got announced last week. And what that's going to allow us to do is really integrate with things like OpenTable or Kayak. So let's say we want to, get a couples massage at the Hilton in a different city. It can theoretically, book those flights, set up the couples massage, book the hotel room, the Uber to the hotel, set up a lunch for after the massage, and really do that in a very simple, limited text conversation. And as it gets to know you, it can, process all these different transactions on your behalf. What would have taken hours to set up, it's like a few text messages later, you have a trip booked to a beach resort where you're getting a couples massage and having lunch afterwards.
Now that's great, and an Uber could pick you up. Yeah, so you look at it, how important. So I know, I just was looking. We have companies from Nigeria, we have companies from Europe, we have companies from all over the world just on this call today. So, and they have incredible companies, but how could they tie Runday in to make it? I mean, people talk about ChatGPT and generative AI, but how could they tie Runday in to even make their product more robust? How would that work?
Yeah, we're really, our next step is really to work with an ecosystem of partners, both on two sides. One is embedding, chat capability into apps. So any app people build or solution they have, you can embed Runday in there. The other side is we can use other applications as a source of data. For example, we're working with our partner in Canada, Makeshift, and they have various restaurants and retailers that they use that do shift management through them. So we're helping them create an interface where these retail shift workers can simply, get a text message, what days are you want to work next week. It'll look at their Google Calendar, and based on their availability, recommend shifts that they may want to take. And the challenge a lot of these retailers have is that they're used to being an exclusive employer, but now people have, 2 or 3 jobs, and maybe they're doing, gig working, things like that. So that complexity is something Runday handles. So to make that possible, we couldn't possibly, work with all these retailers, but we have a partner that does. They have over 100,000 employees that they're using their platform, and so we're adding this capability through this. So we're looking for integration partners, both from adding, a very specialized generative AI chatbot to your software. In addition, using your software as sort of a source of information. And like the use case we talked about, combining, say, I want a couples massage at a beach resort, all of those different things, Uber, OpenTable, these are all API integrations that we're very excited to be doing.
Yeah, but it's not just limited to that, is it, Sanjay? There's all kinds of other things that come out of it. This is just the beginning, isn't it? So, let's switch gears for a minute. You've built some very successful companies. What are the key hacks? So we have a lot of startups on here today, as well as corporates. But what are some of the key hacks when you're building your companies? When we're into those up and down times, what are the hacks in, what would you say if you say the top three key points in terms of building a company from your perspective? What's really important from just Runday, all the companies that you've been involved
So
in?
one would be to pay more attention to the customers than the competition. And so, an example of that is we were at a jet party, over the weekend, and there were some Canadians there, and we were, showing off our new QR code feature, and we were very proud of it. But they, they didn't have Elon Musk satellites, that they could access yet, but they were, unable to use it because their Canadian provider didn't provide service in that area. And so we're just completely revamping the whole feature to allow it to now work, not only in places with low reception, but even like on an airplane. Imagine sitting next to an airplane, you meet someone, you want to create an appointment with them. Runday can have a QR code that lets them add you as, onto their phone, and then, later send an email to schedule an appointment. So you could do this all offline now. So that would have never emerged if we looked at the competition and looked at their feature set and say, hey, what are they missing? Where are the gaps? That competitive analysis would not reveal this possibility that's extremely exciting and doesn't, seem to exist out there, and at least at any kind of scale. So I think, it's very important to, be aware, but not assume that any of the competition is, especially the bigger ones. You can say, okay, Google and HubSpot do certain things. Well, it doesn't matter. They're focused on these massive markets, and anything smaller is not interesting. So as a startup, you get to really lead what starts out as a niche and then expands to one day become a multi-billion-dollar market. So I think that's one of the things, is really focusing on the customers, versus the competition. Another thing would be, there's a lot of wrong ways to build a company, right? But there's not necessarily one right way. And I think that when you see things from the venture capital industry and accountants and lawyers, there sort of seems to be a template of, hey, this is the right way. So if you look at, go all the way back to 2000, the companies that were venture backed actually had the lowest survival rates. A lot of the companies that just bootstrapped and, became profitable, they survived that crash. Later, they become, took a while, but they became massive companies, many years later. And so the ones that sort of followed that VC template and, this is the only way, this is what we do, and just followed all of the advice, from the accountants and lawyers, of course, make sure you listen to them. Their job is to keep you out of jail and keep you compliant and legal, but not necessarily that the way they recommend is the only way to do things. So you need to be a lot more creative about your financial engine, and how are you going to be profitable? How are you going to have enough runway? How are you going to survive these economic events? Because really the companies that thrive are the ones that are, often built in recessions, right? The companies that are built tough from the beginning, that they had a bad funding environment, or survived one, and were able to be mean and lean and get through it. Those are the ones that once, funding became available, they were able to exploit it to scale very rapidly, and they could really utilize that funding as jet fuel.
Yeah, no, I
And
agree.
then, you know,
The one point I just want to reiterate that one point. So for each of you out there, the customer development, getting to know your customer and the kind of things they want and need is really important. So what I've done before, I used to take my iPhone out and I would go out and interview people and I would ask questions. Would you use this? And oh, by the way, if it's a QR feature, what do you think about it? And if they said, well, we don't have it, then I would try to probe and go down further. What do you use? And come up with some kind of model so it's a win-win. Most of the times, many times, companies do not do the customer development. So what happens is they don't get to product market fit fast enough. You got to go out and talk to potential customers. The CEO, the founders of the company need to get out of the office and get out there and talk to folks and figure out what they need, what they want, and how you can be the best solution for them. So that's it. Sanjay, we have one question as a statement here. So how can you be sure AI is giving relevant info that I don't need to manually verify?
so this is a concept called hallucination, and it's getting better every day. And so I would say that, you know, we're not quite there yet where you don't need to verify at all. But we're in the last month or so going from chat GPT 3.5 to the GPT 4.0. It's gotten a lot better of it being aware of when it doesn't know the answer. I mean, a month ago, we were literally, one of the big challenges we had, we would, you know, put a demo in front of the CEO of the company. We would sort of ask some questions, and then we would, you know, say, hey, just ask any question at all. And most of the time this went well. But sometimes they would ask, you know, like, who is the CEO of their own company? And it would say something like Bill Gates, right? It would hallucinate just some popular CEO names rather than saying it doesn't know. Now that's largely been corrected, but that sort of category of problems is not something that we are fully past. The way Runday solves it, we have our own custom proprietary indexing capability. So if you have your own employee manuals, you know, websites, documentation, it may not even be an accuracy thing. You may want to present something differently than the general, you know, internet would. And so we've added this level of specificity to Runday to sort of allow for either, you know, hallucinations or being able to answer a question with your own perspective. But that is definitely something that continues to be a problem, even though it's massively resolved. Now, where I think we're making the most progress, what's happened recently is this idea of constitutional AI, that the AI is a constitution and it cannot violate it. An example of that is pretending it's human. So if you go back even a few months, if you ask Chat GPT, are you human? It's sort of answered, are you human back? Or said yes sometimes. It was, you know, it was deceptive. It avoided the question or answered, and a lot of it because it's read a lot of science fiction books, and you see what AI say in science fiction books. So the constitutional AIs, as those layers have been added, one of the rules that you cannot violate is you cannot pretend you're human. You have to say, hey, I'm a large language model trained by OpenAI and fine-tuned by Runday. And so that's an element that the large players are bringing in. And I'm very excited. I think there are a lot of bots out there that have human names and pretend they're human. And I never liked that. You know, we analyzed 117 bots a year ago, and only 3 could answer what is 2 plus 2. That was one of the problems. But the other one is they would sort of like say you know, they would say, hey, I'm this human name, and they wouldn't elaborate that they are a virtual assistant and an artificial intelligence. So I think we're getting progress on that. But it's not perfect. So you definitely need to do your own validation and have you know, your own sort of content engines be available. If it's not answering correctly, you have to have a technical solution for that, like we've built.
So, you know, like I said, we have a lot of companies from all over the world here today, a number of companies from all over. What's the best way? How can they get a hold of you to be able to follow up? And by the way, does that QR code, can they just snap on that QR code right here, right now to be able to connect?
Yeah, you should be able to snap on that. That'll take you to if it's working, send you the Runday link, and you can book an appointment with me. directly, or contact me at Sanjay@Runday.io. I'll type that into the chat.
Can you put in the chat? Yeah, can you put in your link in the chat? And to all of you there, you have my email vent information. And also I have a Runday link also. Feel free to reach out. So yeah, Dr. Janestein, we'll reach out to you about your wristband. We do have some med tech companies that we're dealing with, especially with AI, and it's interesting, the alpha waves in your brain. So we'd be happy to reach out and touch base with you on it. Sure. All right. Any other questions? Do we have any questions? Any other questions from the audience? So Sanjay, what's going to happen over the next year? What's going to happen with ChatGPT? And what about people that are in different countries? Are we going to get to a point where there are going to be multiple languages, so it doesn't matter where you are, that it's going to answer in your local language?
Yeah, it's gonna answer in your language. In fact, they did a weird test where like there were over a dozen languages in the same sentence. It was able to parse it. So the languages will be available. More interestingly thing, you'll see dialects and professional kind of dialects. So GPT 4.0 passed the bar exam, I believe, within the top 10th percentile of all scores. The last one could take the exam, but it was sort of the bottom 10%. So you'll be able to see not just your language, but legalese in Swahili, these sort of professional dialects of languages as well. So it's going to be very interesting.
No, that's great. That's super. So one other question, you touched upon it a bit, but how will AI help in the HR industry? Talk about give that example about Starbucks and being able to recruit and how this could be.
Yeah. So when we went out to market, we thought of it more as a tool for sales to bring in more revenue and service appointments. But a lot of what we got back almost universally was that sales are doing, this was a few months ago, but sales are doing well, but we don't have the people to service the business. And so we quickly really added these HR use cases. So how it works is say somebody, say a developer in India, over WhatsApp message a number. That number is tied to Runday. It takes them through a screening where they upload their resume, and then HR would get an email saying, hey, here's the person based on their resume and the job position. Here's why they're a good fit. It actually explains it, right, in a way. So HR may not understand all the technical nuances, but guess what? ChatGPT knows code. So any developer position, this is actually a really good fit for. So it explains why somebody's a good fit and gives them a chance to review that chat log and schedule the interview with the best person that would be a fit for that candidate. So this process that could take 3 weeks of sort of like understanding a resume and back and forth, we make quickly. In the retail use case, someone might walk by a retail store, see a now hiring sign with a QR code. They snap the QR code, they immediately start going through the screening, and they get scheduled for their first shift or their interview in a matter of minutes. Versus, this could take a long time of people waiting for each other back and forth, especially when you're already understaffed. It's hard to put time into recruiting and hiring. So Runday really handles a lot of that for you.
Yeah. So to all of you out there, we're coming up to the top of the show. What I want to say is we're at the beginning. This is like the beginning of the 20th century. And Nikola Tesla has talked about alternating current and worked with Westinghouse. And think about how alternating current electricity changed our lives. Over the next 30 years, populations moved from the farm to urban, hospitals, manufacturing, et cetera. Our lives entirely changed. This has a greater impact than that. So for each of your startups out there today, if you embed these technologies like Runday.ai into your solution, it can have a tremendous impact. It surely makes it a whole lot easier to be able to raise funds because this is the future. So contact my friend Sanjay, contact Runday. If you need anything, feel free to reach out to myself. I'd like to say thank you, Sanjay, for taking time out of your busy schedule to get to us. I'd like to say thank you to all of you from around the world for attending today to How to Build a Unicorn. Get shit done. Go out and do it. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'm happy to talk to you, and thanks again. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Thanks, Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Looking forward to meeting with you all.
Yep.